You're listening to the ESP, the European Skeptics Podcast, an independent weekly show set out to bring you news, interesting topics and interviews with people mostly from Europe, building bridges and breaking down language barriers to show the world how active and awesome the skeptical movement is in the region. This is episode 545. I am your host, Pontus Böckman, and I am all by myself. Hejsan hejsan! A little bit of an odd episode this week. Unfortunately, Andras had to pull out pretty late in the planning. He's traveling as usual, and there just wasn't any chance for him to break away from work this week. Not even in the middle of the night to join me for a recording, as he often does. He leads a crazy life, he really does. I'm sure those hours he's working will not be approved by any union, but he still does that. And the go-to solution in these cases is to get Brian on board, Brian Ego, the Eggman, as we did just 2 weeks ago. But it was such a short notice that that wasn't really an option either. But no worries, there will be a show this week, a bit different, but a full-length episode, because there is something I have wanted to do for a while now, and this is the perfect opportunity to do that. More on that in a moment. There are a few things first that I want to mention before we get to the quote-unquote main event. Firstly, it is high time for you all to plan your trip to ESC Liverpool, 16th to 18th of October. That is, of course, the conference by EXO, the European Council of Skeptical Organizations, this year put together by the Merseyside Skeptics and the creators of the award-winning QED. And QED, of course, was the fabulous skeptical conference that has been described as the best skeptical event in the world. And it was held yearly in Manchester in the UK. And I can't begin to say how much it did to bring the international skeptical movement together. Every year it was just even better than the last one. But sadly, last year was the last QED, but the QED gang volunteered to instead arrange this year's ESC in Liverpool. The speakers have now been announced on the website, and it is a fabulous list of people. Please don't miss this event. I will put the link in the show notes, of course, and I hope to see you there. Also, I mentioned Brian, and as a little side note here, not so serious perhaps, he requested and was a bit upset with us that there wasn't any Wasp-watch update last week about the wasp nest in my garden underneath my tree deck. And I have some interesting news if anyone is interested in this, I don't know. But the thing is, so just a short recap, I had wasps coming, I still have wasps coming in and out, going down below the tree deck, going up again. Made a bit uncomfortable for us, hard to eat outdoors, because when we had food there, of course, they wanted their share of that. I had a person here to look at that, and that person said, well, you need to remove the boards so I can find exactly where the nest is before I can do anything about it. And as I said before, I'm a bit of a coward when it comes to wasps, so I didn't want to remove the boards, because what if I found the nest? But here comes the thing. It has been a little bit puzzling to me that it has been so little activity still in this wasp nest, because I've never seen more than maybe 7 wasps at the same time, and I expected that to grow as they became more and more proficient in their building abilities there, so it would be a bigger nest over time. Also, I was a little bit puzzled that the wasps seemed not to always go down at the same place. They seem almost like they have a problem finding their way home, which is strange. They should know better and go directly to where their nest is. Instead, there was a couple of square meters where they just randomly entered, and then supposedly below there they found the nest. But I've been doing some thinking. The activity has not increased. It has decreased. Less and less wasps. but there's still a few. And then the combination with that they couldn't find their way home in a way leads me to a new conclusion. There is no wasp nest. That is what my conclusion is now. I'm not quite sure about this, but what I think they're doing is they're going down there below the tree deck and they're eating away a little bit on the tree material there. And then they fly away and use that material to build a nest somewhere else. They're just mining my deck for material. This is probably what's happening. We'll see there later on. Maybe I can get some clarity on that. So maybe this was the big reveal on the Wasp-watch and actually perhaps wasn't a nest at all. All right. I don't know. On to more serious things, I guess. We have some listener feedback. Last week I talked about the climate crisis, again, as we have to do, and I cited an economic report from a bank that showed that this year's projected increase in BNP in the EU of 1% has already been spent because of the terrible heat waves this summer. Well, we got a message from listener and friend of the show, Catherine de Jong from the Netherlands, very active in what is often referred to as the oldest skeptical organization in the world, the VTDK, the Vereniging tegen de Kwakzalverij, or something to that effect. It was founded in the 1800s, a really old organization, and Catherine pointed out that the bank in question, the bank behind the report, Triodos Bank, is the same bank that got the Dutch Skeptical Shame Award in 2010. So I looked into this, and the bank was actually started with a background in anthroposophy, which is not a good sign. It got this Shame Award, the Mester Cacadoris Prize, by the VTDK for being associated with and investing in a number of esoteric nonsense organizations and companies like Veleda, which is a producer of anthropological and homeopathic remedies, and various other anthroposophical health centers and organizations. In the agriculture sector, Triodos Bank, at least back then, in 2010, had close ties with the Louise Bolk Institute, an institution engaged in research in the fields of organic agriculture, medicine and nutrition based on anthroposophical principles. They also got the prize for promoting alternative treatments in poor countries, for instance, the reconstruction of an acupuncture clinic in Indonesia, and in 2008, they donated funds to Homeopaths Without Borders for homeopathy training in Kenya. This is not great. So, obviously, that makes me think that perhaps this bank isn't the best source of information for a skeptical podcast to use. It's interesting how much you always have to be wary of your sources, and especially in a case like this, when you read something that fits your worldview, you tend not to check out things you hear too much when it agrees with what you already expect to be true, like in this case. So, that begs the question, is the report wrong then? Well, I don't know. The conclusions of the report are not implausible, and if I was hoodwinked by this report, so were many others as well. After the recording of last week's show, the same news item has appeared in numerous credible news outlets. I saw it in The Guardian, that's where I reported from, and The Guardian is usually a good source. And then later I saw it in many other mainstream and normally trustworthy newspapers, here in Sweden at least. So that makes me feel a little bit better about it. And another thing is that the report was also analyzed by independent experts who also found it credible. One of them was Swedish professor of economics at Gothenburg University, Olof Johansson Stenman. He looked into this and found it credible. A bit surprisingly, the report didn't include the cost of the actual fires or the death itself. It looked into the negative economic effects that are due to less efficient workforce, because it's hard to focus. If you can scientifically show that if you have to work in an environment where it's 25 degrees Celsius or above, then you're not as efficient and you sleep badly, and that also affects your efficiency. It's also a question of disrupting transportation. Power plants didn't produce as much power as they normally should do, and there is a lower agricultural production. That's what they looked at. So what can we learn from this? Well, I think obviously there is a big economic and financial effect of the climate crisis. That's not the issue. Should we trust an anthroposophical bank for the analysis? Perhaps not. But in this case, they were probably not totally off or wrong. All right, so enough of the preamble. Let's get to today's main attraction that I promised you. So let's go back a little bit in history here. When we were a newborn podcast with barely a few months of experience, we were still doing our best to find our feet. And one of the things that we did was to try to get in touch with all of our skeptical quote-unquote heroes, asking them for interviews. And a little over 10 years ago, in March of 2016, we reached out to one of the real veterans of the trade, James the Amazing Randi. He was 87 years old at the time, and he would eventually, sadly, pass away a few years later at the age of 92. Most listeners are surely aware of James Randi and the influence that he has had on generations of skeptics. In many ways, he was the virtual successor of Harry Houdini, both in the areas of escapology and conjuring as a performer, entertainer, but also as a skeptic. I don't think Houdini used the word skeptic to self-describe himself, but of course that term wasn't really around back then, but he really was a skeptic, and he devoted a large part of his life to debunking fraudsters, particularly so-called mediums who for money held seances where they claimed to be able to contact the dead. And Randi, much later, did the same. Randi was involved in publicly exposing fraudsters like Uri Geller and Peter Popov, and he was one of the founders of CSICOP, the Committee for the Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal, nowadays known as CSI, the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry. He also traveled tirelessly and inspired the creation of countless skeptical organizations outside of the US, such as in Australia, in many European countries. And if you want to know more, please look him up, because he really was a role model for a whole generation, or even many generations of skeptics, many of whom are still very active today. So what I want to do is to play you this 10-year-old interview again. We very rarely, if ever, have reused old material. But in this case, I think it's very special. I think it's very interesting. Maybe you have heard it before, but maybe not. And if you did, chances are that it was way back in 2016, and it is worth listening to again. And it's also cool to hear Jelena's voice on the interview. Jelena Levin, who was a co-founder of this podcast, together with Andras and myself, and who stayed on as a host even after having moved to the US, which made scheduling a nightmare, really. She finally left the show in June of 2020, but she was a great asset for this podcast for a long time, and it's very nice to hear her voice here on this interview again. So, let's listen to our interview from March of 2016 with James the Amazing Randi.
On every other episode, we release an interview with a prominent figure of the international skeptic movement. These people either represent an organization or project on a national or international level, or are widely recognized for their achievements in educating the public into skepticism. Today's guest has really lived up to both. He is probably the single most recognized skeptic in the world. But just to try to sum up his achievements briefly for those who don't know him, he's a Canadian-born retired magician, escapologist, and paranormal investigator, author of 10 books, contributor of countless TV shows and films, co-founder of the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry, and founder of the educational foundation bearing his name. Psychology professor Ray Hyman called him the face of the skeptical movement. But he also played a role in the kickstarting of several European skeptical organizations. So much so that I would even say he is the grandfather of European skepticism. So, James the Amazing Randi, welcome to the show.
Thank you, and I'm feeling much older than I was just a few minutes ago.
Well, I didn't mean to offend you, but...
No offense taken. I'm 87 years of age, and when I announce that figure, I usually say going on 100 because I'm optimistic.
Yeah.
That's the spirit, I think.
That sounds good to all of us. Yeah. Yeah, we keep our fingers crossed, as good skeptics do, that it happens.
I respect it highly, of course.
But since you just mentioned your age, you've had quite a life so far, and it's very nicely depicted, those achievements you've had, in a recent movie that is titled An Honest Liar. It was released in 2015. Do you know anything about how well it was received across Europe?
Well, yes, I've followed that rather closely, out of general interest, of course, and I'm proud to say that it has received raves all over Europe, all over the world, and there are 8 different versions of it as far as a soundtrack that you can choose. Not a soundtrack, I should say, a visual representation of the speech that's being made. It's translated in 8 different languages, and shortly to be 3 more, I believe. It has gotten fantastic reviews all over the world, and we're very, very happy with it. And my partner Davey and I, every now and then we sit at our respective transmitters and receivers and whatnot, and we watch different versions of it with great interest. It has caused a minor sensation, and we're very, very satisfied with the reaction.
Is it going to be available openly to the public at some point so that the skeptical activist could jump on it and start translating, putting up subtitles or things like that? Or it's going to stay in the hands of the company? Well,
I think it's going to stay in the hands of the company, but they are very enthusiastic about getting it. When I say translations now, I mean there are just subtitles that appear each screen, generally giving the text, but it's not word for word translated. That would be a momentous job, to say the least. I would rather level Gibraltar than do that, but and I have no intentions of leveling Gibraltar in case I get accused of that. I am easily accused by detractors all across the world who say, aha, he promised to dismember, dislocate, and move Gibraltar, and there should be something said about that. But I try to avoid the possibility of any such silly accusations. I think you would be, maybe not quite so astonished, being a skeptic yourselves, but I sometimes am really astonished at how silly people can get in inventing all kinds of canards about me and about the skeptical movement and the CSI and various other agencies that exist. But I should not be too surprised. I really should not.
It really is a fantastic movie, if I may say so. And I'm sure that you get your fair share of abuse and threats and stuff after your career here. How about, there are 2 people, protagonists you may call them, in the movie that is depicted quite well, or a lot. That's Uri Geller and Peter Popov. So how do you feel about these 2 persons now after what you went head to head with them both in your career?
Oh, well, with Uri Geller, he's pretty well disavowed, I think, by by many people who at one time actually believed that he could do supernatural spoon bending. What a profession. What do you do for a living? I bend spoons. Is this useful to mankind? No, I don't really think so, but it brings me a lot of money. That would probably be his honest response to it, if he has an honest response on anything. It seems like a wasted life, to tell you the truth, and I'd hate to have to admit that that's the only thing I do with my life is bend spoons. But I must say another thing too. Geller is just not an important factor in the skeptical community anymore. He maintains a fantastic website, so I'm told. I've taken a look at it occasionally, but I can't take too much of it because my teeth begin to rot. But other people like Popoff now, Peter Popoff, the evangelist, and we have hundreds of them here in the United States and Canada alone, of course. Peter Popoff, first of all, has gained a huge amount of weight. He must weigh at least twice as much as he did at the time that I exposed him on the major television programs here in the United States of America. But what he does is in such bad taste, he will take something that he recorded years ago, and he will present it with his own face showing on the television screen, and you see a face that is just huge. He's many kilograms more than he ever weighed in his life. And then it suddenly switched to a miniature little guy running around and shrieking, "Praise Jesus," and carrying on. I don't know how he can mix those two videos and do it without any shame whatsoever. I don't know what methods he's using now to do his act, but we exposed that very thoroughly on something known as the Johnny Carson Show here in the United States of America. That was very, very effective. And it's on YouTube and is, I'm told from the YouTube folks, I have a couple of confidants there who tell me that it is constantly shown and shown and shown. And you can see from the figures that they exhibit on YouTube that it is very, very popular.
Yeah, but he's still making a lot of money, I believe, in different.
Of course, because people can't be convinced of anything. If they have decided that this is what they're going to believe, that Popoff is close to God, someplace in the sky or under the earth, I have no idea what their concept of heaven or hell is. But if they're convinced of it, they not only want it, but they need it very badly. They really need to have it, even though they may recognize that it's not very likely to be true, but they brush that all aside. And I remember, oh goodness, one lady that I accosted at a faith healing meeting where Popoff was up on the stage screeching and carrying on. This is several years ago. Oh, many years ago, really. I accosted her after she had been on stage to be healed, and she had literally fallen over into the arms of the attendants because she could not walk, though she had 2 canes. And I accosted her as she left the audience. And I said to her, the healing doesn't appear to have taken very well. And I was trying to be kind, and she looked at me and she said, well, no, and that's entirely my fault. You see, I didn't have enough faith. And I said, so you're blaming it on yourself? And she said, oh, yes, it's certainly not Reverend Popoff's fault. And she tottered away with the still 2 canes in her hand, very unsteadily. And then she suddenly turned, and we had the camera on her at that moment. And she turned and she waved one of the canes at me. She said, but I still believe. She wanted to make sure that her belief was not questioned. And she sort of cast her eyes heavenward.
But do you think in instances like that, when you come across people who not only want to believe, but like you said, they need to believe. And then people like Peter Popov come along and then they offer them what they need. Do you think people like that can be persuaded that this is not true and we should just rely on ourselves and the facts and the, rational thinking and the science? Can they really be persuaded even though they've got this conviction?
Yes, they can be persuaded. And I will tell you something that my partner Davey and I, we certainly when within the United States, when we know of showings of the film that are going to be in large enough venues, we will often take a trip to attend the showing of the film, and then there's a Q&A, question and answer session afterwards. And after that's all over, most of the people leave, and there are always 5 or 6 who come down to the foot of the stage, and we're still on the stage, and they have tears coming down their faces. And they'll look up at us and say things like, "You made a great difference in my life." Now, you cannot purchase that. You cannot buy it. You can't invent it. It's something that people offer you freely. This admission that they have made a change in their lives and that you were somewhat responsible for it. And that is very sobering. It is very sobering indeed. It makes us realize that we have to return to the fray again and continue on. You can't give it up. You've got to try to reach people who would not normally have been reached. And the responsibility of that position, I assure you, is very heavy on us.
Incredible.
Yeah, that is so true, that the role model that someone is presented with can determine their path later on. And this is why I think your role in the skeptical movement in Europe and elsewhere, I do know that you gave something like that. You gave that hope or that example of how things can be done to lots of European people, European skeptics, who were skeptics per se, but they didn't know that they could even act on it. And you had quite a big role in some of the European organizations that came to life between the 1980s and the 1990s. You traveled a lot across Europe, right? So I was not too recently sent an article from Skeptical Briefs. That was the newsletter of the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry, if I'm not mistaken. From 1991, it was sent over to me by Barry Carr. It was about the Hungarian skeptical movement and skeptics in Asia. And in that article, you were mentioned, and I do know how the Hungarian skeptic movement started, and I do know how important a role you played in it. But I have heard from many other organizations across Europe. So can you even tell how many countries you influenced like that in Europe?
Well, that's hard to say. I just, a couple of months ago, I returned from a trip that I made to Finland. I have a lot of good friends in Finland. I did some lecturing around the country of Finland, and I went from there directly to Italy, and I had my first experience with 5 different theaters in Italy, all covered simultaneously with pictures of me alive.
Wow.
And I got to answer questions from 5 different parts of Italy all at the same time. It was quite an experience. Electronically, it was quite an experience, I can assure you. But I'm on my way to, I came back from Australia not too long ago either. I did a whole tour of Australia. I covered it from one coast to the other with great success. And I'm on another lecture tour. I'm getting it together, trying to organize it. These things are not easily organized, as you might imagine, because you have to bring all the travel arrangements and such into it. And at my age, I rather insist that I travel in in first class if possible. And because I can literally, I must admit, I can literally get into an aircraft now before it takes off, lay back, and wake up moments later to me, 2 hours ahead, and I've already landed at the airport, and I didn't even know that I'd taken off. Of course, I miss a lot of good cocktails and a few things like that, but I guess I could do without that. But it's still very active for me, very active, and I want to keep moving. I think if I stop moving, I'll die, and I don't want that to happen. Not yet.
When and where do you think people from Europe can catch you the next time?
Well, if you're on Facebook, these things will all be announced on Facebook. That's
okay.
where you're taken to send people for references. I had nothing to do with Facebook until rather recently, but now we're on there all the time, and I keep announcements going up. And I think there are probably some published just yesterday. But Facebook is the place to keep track of us. And I can tell you that as a free service, I don't know how these people like Skype operate, for example. We're using Skype at this very moment. And I find it difficult to understand how they survive. But as long as they do, I have no complaints. And I have no right to try to look into it, but it might be magic for all I know. I'm not too
sure. It probably is.
I have to make that admission.
Yeah, it probably is. Yeah, but they are not honest liars. They don't tell us that they are not using magic, so they let us believe that it's magic.
That's reassuring.
So if we just stay on topic of European skepticism for a bit, because you've been to the both sides of the pond, the American side and European side, what do we as skeptics in Europe do differently from America, if anything? Is there anything we can learn from American skeptics? What are your thoughts about that? I mean, and how much do you follow the European skeptic movement?
Well, I must say Hungary has always had a very good skeptical movement going. And Gyula Benci, of course, an old friend of mine from way back, from many. I haven't been in touch with him. And as we said in our preamble to this podcast, I have to really click in as soon as I leave you folks. I'm not trying to get away. But I will have to get a hold of Gyula and find out just how he's doing. He is a great purveyor of common sense in my estimation, and I highly respect him. But I haven't spoken to him lately. I must say that the American committees and organizations, I do believe, tracing some of the history of it, have influenced, have gone out of their way to influence people around the world in various countries. And I speak regularly with China now, as a matter of fact. But in China, not everybody has access to the internet. And so it's rather limited access in China. But I still do the best I can to reach some people there who have the advantage of being in touch electronically like that. But the rest of the world, Australia is very, very active in the skeptical mode, I must say. And Richard Saunders is a very close friend of mine and very, very effective. I would like to take a certain amount of credit for the American movement, however, as having inspired a skeptical attitude across the world. And I think that it's the case that a lot of persons in other countries, other than the United States of America and Canada, for example, they were maybe unaware that there was an active group going. And I get this all the time. At least 2 or 3 times a week, I will get a note from somebody who I've never heard from before. And they have just discovered the skeptical movement in their own country or in the United States. And they say, I had no idea there were people who thought like I did. Now that's a shame, that's a pity. So many people are missing out on this, what I consider, and I'm sure you agree with me, a very sensible attitude to be skeptical. Now, not to paranoid about it, and certainly not cynical. Never cynical. Cynical just rubs me the wrong way altogether. I am not cynical. I am skeptical, but I am not cynical. And we have to maintain that difference. We have to have a limit. We can't say that everything is nonsense and we can't believe anything. No, there are some wonderful things. Just go out and take a look at a sunrise, and then just sit back and say, wait a minute, that's quite remarkable. Now, the sun didn't rise. The earth turned to face the sun. I don't want to get into the details, you see. But to be strictly correct, sunrise is not an event. It's actually the earth turning to face the sun. I don't know if this is a shock to you, but
I'm writing this down now, so I know. Right. So we've said several times that you have had quite a long career, but you announced last year that you were retiring from JREF. So is that really true? Because you seem to be fairly active still. And what are you doing now if you are retired?
Well, I have to, first of all, slow down somewhat because I can only accomplish a certain amount per day. And I'm working hard on the finishing touches of my 11th book, to be titled A Magician in the Laboratory, which will deal, it's going to be a very thick book, I assure you, but it's going to deal with visits that I've made over these decades, these past 4 or 5 decades particularly, to various labs, scientific labs, and scientific ventures of various kinds around the world, where scientists, real scientists, trained scientists with degrees and such, have erred greatly in accepting all sorts of nonsense that is just not true at all. And I'm not talking about spoon bending or anything silly like that. A lot of them have accepted things that are so fantastic that you have to wonder if they really are sane and really have scientific training. I'm shocked in many cases to hear of these beliefs that they spread. I'm not going to start to name people, but I have a long list of scientists around the world that I visited, and there are only 2 results of my visits to them. They either looked at what I showed them, and it was often on video or whatever from previous work that they've done, and I could see where the trick was being carried out. I would point that out to them, and I would either get a very quiet reception to it, and then afterwards a chat to the effect, well, I wasn't aware of that, Mr. Randi. I had no idea that was being done. And that's an acceptance of the fact that they had been hornswoggled, so to speak. And then the other reaction is just raising their chins and looking at me and say, well, that may be your opinion, Mr. Randi, but I believe that it actually is ESP or whatever. Now, that second reaction to my revelations is scarcer than the other one. I don't get that as often as I used to. And I think that science in general is getting straightened out in many respects. But there was a time years ago, I would have to go back 20 years or so in my memory to come to another incident like the kind of thing that happened to me, and happened to me in Hungary even, where they just looked at me with their jaws stuck out at me belligerently and said things like, that's not true. That's not true at all. I know this is the real thing. I'm a PhD in so-and-so and such and such. And they throw their authority, their degrees at you, and they seem to think that's going to do the job. No, that doesn't do the job, because I can fool a PhD with a magic trick. as easily as I can someone with much less education and prestige. I assure you, as a matter of fact, we magicians came to the conclusion a long time ago that our most difficult audience is children, and for a strange reason. Children are not yet sophisticated enough to be fooled. Now, I know that that's a hard statement for you to accept, perhaps, but you see, we know if I were to take an object in one hand and transfer it to the other hand, then open that hand and show that it had vanished, it may be that I didn't actually transfer it from my right hand to my left hand, for example. So when I opened my left hand, it had never left my right hand. That can happen. Children aren't accustomed to that kind of deception, and they are very, very hard to fool. They'll even point at you and say, "But I didn't see it go into your other hand." Mm. And they're right on that. They're right on that. But the misdirection and the expressions and the pointing of my head and such as a conjurer would convince an adult. It doesn't necessarily convince a child until that child is sophisticated enough to be fooled. That's the expression I use. Think about that.
Yeah. But you say that even, good education doesn't prevent you from being fooled, doesn't protect you from being fooled. So you can fool anybody really with a good magic trick. Have you?
Oh, yes.
Have you ever been fooled yourself to believe in something paranormal? Maybe not lately, but in when you were younger.
Oh, yes, of course. When I was younger, and that's what got me interested in the whole conjuring art. I prefer not to say magic. It's not magic. Magic would really be a miracle. But the word conjuring and conjurer, much more accurate. They're used in the UK all the time. I'm happy to report. So there is a conjurer and there is a magician. A magician doesn't belong to the magic circle, though they don't call it the conjuring circle. So I have, yes, I have been deceived as a young man. I was deceived many, many times by wonderful artists that I came upon in one way or another. And sometimes I did not come up with a solution as to how I had been deceived. And that was always a pleasure. That was always a delight to know that I could be deceived that way. And I had to work harder in order to be able to solve it. And in professionals, once I was in the conjuring trade as a recognized performer, magicians are very, very generous in that respect, I assure you. They will share secrets with one another because they don't want the thing to not go on and not be developed by artists. And as a matter of fact, some of my mentalism stunts I have confided in mentalists that I know. And when I say mentalist, I mean a conjurer who appears to do everything with the mind, you see. Azure Geller would like you to believe that he actually concentrates his mind and the spoon bends. What a ridiculous concept. But nonetheless, that's something that only conjurers can understand and can really discuss in detail. The fact that children are not yet sophisticated enough to be fooled.
Well, as a lifelong skeptic activist, and you saw it all, I can probably imagine, and you've got a good understanding of the movement around the world, here in Europe and America, Canada, like you mentioned, Australia, etc. Do you think there is a proverbial light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak? And do you think that common sense, science, and reason will prevail at the end? For example, I know that there's going to be a reason rally in America in June. Do you think that there's going to be a world where there'll be no need for such thing to happen because people will be reasonable?
Well, that's an excellent question, I must say. But I'll use the dirty word, religion. Religion is magic. It is, if it works. Now, I think that one word I use to describe, when people often ask me, they say, how do you know that prayer doesn't work? I simply look them straight in the eye and I simply say, Dachau. Mm-hmm. Now, you know that the inhabitants of the concentration camps in Nazi Germany, you know that they prayed fervently not to be put into the ovens. But they went by the hundreds and then thousands over the years. They died, even though they prayed earnestly to an imaginary God someplace in the sky or under the earth. That's my evidence of the fact that prayer does not work. And it's brutal, true, and I get some horrified looks sometimes when I use that word, but it's very, very effective. Dachau.
Wow. What's the reaction when you throw that bomb on them?
Usually they're very silent. And sometimes they will just turn away. And I just hope at that point that maybe my comment got through to them. Maybe it actually served some purpose. I hope that it does, because I think that religion is the greatest farce that the human race has ever been subject to. It is misused. It is a power play. The Vatican is one of the most evil organizations I can imagine of. This is my estimation. This is my opinion. Now, I don't ask you to necessarily share it, but the current Pope, by the way, I have a certain amount of affection for this gentleman. I think that he is the most sensible Pope that I've ever heard of, and I think he really is a good human being, though I think he's misdirected because he's religious. Religion is the greatest mistake that we have ever made, and I am an avowed atheist. I'm willing to be convinced to the contrary, but always willing to be convinced to the contrary if evidence is presented. But they don't offer evidence. They'll thump a Bible and say it's all in here. No, it isn't. It's self-contradictory. It's a failed book. It's just ridiculous. They keep on saying there's no errors in the Bible at all. Yes, it is packed. Every page has an error on it somewhere or another, and a grievous error, something that misrepresents reality very strongly. Now I'm getting all worked up here, but
yeah. No, it's very interesting because I've had the discussions with other skeptics, because there are a few skeptics,
yes,
that are still religious.
Oh yes.
How do you feel about that?
I feel that I don't understand them at all, and I will often get into discussions and say, "Prove it." They say, "Oh, it doesn't need proof. It doesn't need proof." No, it doesn't need proof for them, because they need that belief so strongly. They need it so badly to support their view of the world. I think that's a pity that they can't see through what is being preached to them for so many generations after generation after generation. It's ridiculous. And again, the word Dachau is my evidence.
But there are others who are religious or following religious ideas based on intellectually well thought out things. Like there is one neuroscientist in Hungary who just recently got the Brain Award. And he's really the most prominent neuroscientist in Hungary. And he happens to be a creationist. What he often says is that the brain is so developed, it is so complex, it is so beautiful that it could not have been without a designer.
Well, prove it to me. Come on. Hey, I'm a conjurer. I regularly fool that brain, that human brain, regularly. And I do it. It's easy for me because I'm a professional. That is my profession, fooling people. But doing it for the purpose of delight and entertainment, certainly not for any other purpose to convince them of any philosophy or to part them from their hard-earned money. Not at all. That's not why I do it. I'm a professional magician. I know organizations of professional magicians that I highly respect, and they share my opinion on this. Most of them certainly do. There are some that are renegades, and they take advantage of people's naivete, and that's what it is. It's not dishonesty, it's naivete that these people suffer from. And this gentleman, whoever he is, I think that if I could sit down with him and ask for the evidence, I think I might even misdirect his belief system somewhat and make him think. That's my purpose in life, is to make people think about the preconceived notions they have, particularly about religion.
Basically, just like Hitch said, religion poisons everything. Yeah.
But speaking about proving things, you've had for many years now the $1 Million Challenge. Have you changed the rules a little bit, or is it still on, or what's happening to the $1 Million Challenge?
Oh, it's still on, but it's given under different circumstances now. People can no longer apply for it. What we do is we search out people who are making claims of this kind, and we challenge them directly. And, of course, they do not respond. You can't imagine Uri Geller responding to a challenge like that. You saw in An Honest Liar his reaction to these things. I love the unctuous way he says, I think I can imitate him rather well. But what I do is real. No, it's not. Bending spoons is not a profession for a grown man or a child or for anyone.
Well, it is real in a way, because they are bending the spoon, right?
Well, they are.
Yeah, but they're pre-bending it, if I'm not mistaken.
Please, now you're giving away all the secrets.
Oh shit! I saw it.
Now, one thing that strikes me about Geller, by the way, while we're on that odious subject, I'm astonished that he doesn't have the strength that I do. Now, at 87, I swear, I promise you, and I can demonstrate it for you, should we ever meet. I can hold as many as 10 or 12 teaspoons in one hand. In one hand, I can actually hold them and not fall down or become overbalanced. But when Mr. Geller is presented with one spoon, he picks it up from the table or takes it from the hand of the person who presents it in both hands. You don't need two hands to lift up a teaspoon. But then he turns away and it goes behind his body, and he wants to walk to the opposite side of the room and invite everyone to follow him over. And it's out of sight as he crosses the room. Then when he turns back, he's got his other hand over the lower part of the spoon, and all you see is the bowl sticking out of the edge of his hand. And he says, Luke, Luke. And that's the way he pronounces L-O-O-K, Luke, as in Luke and John and the other people in the Bible. Oh. And he strokes the spoon very gently. He strokes it at the part where it's already bent, and then slowly reveals the bend. And everybody goes, ooh. Now, if he didn't turn away like that, he wouldn't have a chance to bend it. But you can see his shoulders hunch as he bends it. It's ridiculous. And yet he's been getting away with this for so many years. The magicians all laugh when they see him. No, there's something that you can find on YouTube, and I invite you to look it up. Yes, on YouTube, they have Geller causing a compass, a big navigational compass, a huge, monstrous thing, a ship's compass. He causes it to turn, but you can actually see him on camera plugging something onto his thumb. It's an obvious move, and when he then waves his hands over the compass that's sitting there, the compass starts to move, and everybody, ooh, and it gets them all to join hands in the audience. This is misdirection, of course, as we say in the trade. And you see the compass move, and they're all oohing and ahhing because they can. And then you see him take this cap off his thumb. It's what we call in the trade a thumb tip. It looks like a human thumb, but it actually has a space at the end of it. It's a thimble sort of a thing that fits over the thumb. You can see him go through that. Look it up on YouTube. Uri Geller and a compass, I guess, would probably do it. And you will see him, and they actually circle his hand as he puts the device on and takes it off afterwards. He is a sloppy operator. But of course, remember, he also doesn't need to be very good because he already has the reputation.
Oh, yeah.
Oh gosh, I think it's just because of the parallel is so obvious. I'm just going back to the Trump and the elections in America, how he doesn't have to be a good anything and he doesn't have to try hard because people have a certain perception about Trump. So, yeah.
I think we all do.
It's going a bit off topic, but it's actually getting really scary closer to elections it gets, and so...
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, it is. It absolutely is. Trump is such a pompous ass. That's the technical term we use to describe folks like him. And the way he's always pointing a finger and throwing his head back so you're looking straight into his chin and pontificating. And the word pontificating was never better applied than to Donald Trump, of course, in my estimation.
Yeah. No, but not only is it a pompous ass, that is his main advantage. He uses that as his main thing.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Him as a president of the United States, I just can't imagine it.
It's a scary thought.
I have so many friends who also can't imagine it. I'm just about tomorrow morning to go out and cast a vote in the coming election. I want to make sure that my vote is not wasted, that I don't die in between. I'd hate not to have contributed to the demise of the Republican Party, and I'm exposing my party affiliation here, but that's fine. Thank you. I am a registered Democrat, so there.
Yeah, no, I think the whole world... I
don't think any of us is really surprised, mate.
No, absolutely not. And then also the thing is, the whole world is horrified, not just America, because America is one of the strongest countries in the world, and if it's led by somebody like Trump, we basically all, then, you know...
Don't say that word.
Doomed. I was going to say the F word, because
okay,
that's the only appropriate word in the circumstances, because, so let's hope it's not. Let's really hope that in this instance the reason will prevail, and people will just get their act together.
Years ago, I was alone in the house at this particular time. I turned on television, and Barack Obama was walking with his family down Constitution Avenue in Washington. He was walking along the street and on his way to the White House to take up residence. And I sat in my living room and I cried like a baby. It finally dawned on the American public that they could put a black man in the White House. What a great surge forward in rationality. And I know that at that moment I was so overcome, I thought this is a huge step forward. A huge step forward. Now, I don't think that President Obama, was given all the freedom that he might have had. And I think that political problems entered his stay in the White House. But I understand that. I think that he did an excellent job for the time that he had and the facilities that he had. But my goodness, the fact that a black man went into the White House astonished me. And I wept unashamedly. No, I was all by myself, but I sat there with tears going down my face and proudly, very proudly.
Let us all hope that it's going to happen to you again when a woman gets into that chair. Can
you imagine? And oh my God, if Mrs. Clinton should ever become president of the United States, that'll be two blows that irrationality will not be able to survive, I swear. Now, I just hope that she can, if she gets in there. And that's my hope. That's my hope, I must say. If she gets in there, that she will be able to do what she hopes she can do. She certainly has the experience and the background for that job. But why are we talking about American elections?
We're straight into politics here, and it's really maybe not the focus on the show, but it's very interesting. Yeah.
We occasionally do that, so
it's because of the some parallels between the famous fraudsters and the Donald Trump. Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
I think we are all very eager to see you in action, meaning that you can show us what you just told us about, how you can do the spoon bending in the way that Uri Geller cannot. But it's not easy to really meet you in person. But there are occasions when and where people can do that. That occasion was for a long time the amazing meeting. And we were lucky enough to experience that twice in Europe, in London as well, because TAM is happening in Las Vegas, but it did happen in London twice. What happened to it? And what's the future for TAM in Las Vegas? And is there going to be another TAM outside of the United States?
Well, I will just suggest this to you that I'm in close. Well, I'm one of the founders of the Committee for Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal, which is now CSI, Committee for Skeptical Inquiry, as we all know, and I hope. And I suspect that there is going to be some sort of affiliation made. I certainly hope that can be done. This is only information, and it's only a possibility now. So don't hold me to it. But I think that something like that will happen. Again, I am slowing down in my older age, and I can't travel quite as much as I would like to. I can't operate at this speed that I used to. I can still hold my head up, I think, in a discussion, but I have to make changes in my routine and in my capacity for work. So that's all to be decided, and I think we can have some news for you pretty soon. So I ask you to stay tuned for that, and we'll see how it works out.
What about Europe?
Yes, I think my experience in Europe has always been very satisfactory, whether in Germany or in Finland or in Italy or wherever. It has always been very, very satisfactory, and it's always been handled very well whenever I've had a meeting in Europe. And I wouldn't mind taking the venue to Europe. It would have to be discussed at length. It's a complicated thing. As you can well realize, this is attracting people from all over Europe and from the UK in most cases to a meeting where they have to really travel long distances, and an expensive proposition as well for them. But to make it worthwhile, it's got to have something. I've got to have other speakers. I want people like like Richard Saunders, for example, in Australia. That's what I'm saying. And no, he's a precious friend of mine, and I just if I could have him with me at all of these events. I just did a whole tour, as I mentioned previously, of Australia from coast to coast, and he was at just about every one of those. assiduously. He never left my side, and that helped a great deal. I had great cooperation on that, and I have to entertain. I have to think of many different possibilities for expanding. Pardon me. The whole idea of the JRAF traveling around and having this kind of effect worldwide. But I better hurry along on it. I've only got so much time left. Only another 100 years, I think, or perhaps do it.
Randi, I think one of the things that makes you so lovable is that you always use a lot of humor in your communication. So how important is it to reach other people by using humor, and has it always come natural to you?
Oh, no, it comes natural to me. I'm a performer, after all. I started this when I was, I guess, about 14 years of age. I first started to do magic tricks and whatnot, and that's a long time ago. That's in another century, and it's in another millennium. Come on. That's way back. I can claim great antiquity. But, no, it's a natural thing with we show folks, so to speak. Yes, it's something I hope I handle reasonably well. And the time has shown that I guess I get through to a great number of people, and in a very, well, as I said, attending showings of An Honest Liar, the documentary film, about me and my work and my partner. And those experiences, the people come to me with the tears in their eyes. You made a great change in my life. Whoa. You can't buy that. As I said previously, I know I'm repeating myself, but you can't buy that, folks. You just can't buy it. And you can't invent it. It's there, and people really look at you, and you realize what your responsibility is in the skeptical movement. And we don't ever lose your pride in being skeptics, being organized skeptics who want to get the message out. It's a big message to be gotten out here, and we have to work hard at it. There are people who are just waiting to hear what we've got to say. And I know that from vast experience over many, many years now, over decades. And continue on. Don't fail. Don't falter. Make sure that you work hard at it. If you're a skeptic and you're dedicated and you really want to help people and you want to lead them to a different sort of truth, there are varieties of truth, of course. Please do.
We were going to ask you the next question, what keeps you going? But I think you've answered it in just now in what you said. We have to keep going. There are people whose minds being changed, and it's really truly inspirational, I have to say. Just a quick question about your upcoming book. When do you expect it to be released? Have you got a date yet, or is it not at that stage yet?
I don't even have a publisher yet, because we've got two publishers that are sort of haggling with me. They're very anxious to do a lot of editing, but I don't want one of my precious words taken out, of course. That's the way writers are. This may be a thick book, but it's probably my last major publication as well. Though I have I have the skeleton of one of them sort of assembled in my word processor. So there may even be one beyond that. Well, that would be 13. No, it would only be 12. Okay, we're all right. I wouldn't want it. there.
Well, let us know when you've got the dates and we can promote it here. I know we're only a small podcast, but we'll do our best.
Yeah, we'll buy at least 3 copies, one for each of us.
At least, yeah. Well, I'll buy 2 copies, one for me and one for my husband, so.
Goodness, oh yes.
Yeah. I do think that I'll try to buy a hard copy just in case I can meet up with you at some point and have it signed.
Well, we'll try that, Andras, and I want to thank you for your call today and for this happy circumstance of a little conference. I perhaps spoke too much, but that is what show people do, unfortunately.
You can't speak too much to us. Sure.
No, it was our pleasure. There's no such thing as speaking too much. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for your time.
You're very, very welcome. My great pleasure, of course.
And I'd like to add something. Since you are very used to people coming up to you and saying this, I won't shy away from it. Because I'd like to thank you for changing my life as well. I was a high school student when I first heard about who James Randi was. And that's mainly thanks to those people you mentioned as well, like Gyula Bente and others. And I got involved so much in the skeptic movement that I decided to write up an essay to Termiset Világa. It's a journal that they had an essay competition, a student essay competition, in which you offered a small prize for those who are writing about a skeptical topic. And I did. And I did get your prize, which still is one of the things I'm the proudest of. Because it was probably the last push that I needed to go down that road, that I am a skeptic now. And I wanted to be very rigorous in my way of thinking, in my questioning my own beliefs and everything that I experience in a way and require evidence. So that way of thinking, that is something that I ultimately owe to you. And I really want to thank you for that. And I do think that many other people around the world feel like that as well and share my feelings.
Well, thank you, Andras. It's very good of you to say that. And as I say, I do get this comment increasingly with the showing of the film and with any kind of public appearance that I make. There are many of those every month, I can assure you. I always feel very grateful to know that I've gotten across to a certain number of people, and I want to increase that number. It's important. And thank you for the work that you folks do. You're only a small number of people, but you have the right purpose in mind. And I'm sure you're very successful at it, and I hope this experience has added to it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
James the Amazing Randi.
Thank you very much, James.
Goodbye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Great stuff. Fascinating man. Very generous of him to join us over at Skype at the time. He had no reason to know any of us or who we were or what we wanted, but he was always very devoted to encouraging critical thinking and the skeptical movement. And I should add also that the three of us, Andras, Jelena and myself, were lucky enough to meet Randi in person a year later. That was in Wrocław in Poland in 2017 for the ESC, the European Skeptics Congress. And that is the kind of great people you can get to meet on such events. So again, you should go to ESC Liverpool this year. And you should start by going to the website right now and sign up for this year's best skeptical event in Europe. With that, one could think that this episode is over, but I have 2 more quick things to cover. And the first one is this week's Really Wrong Award. So, again, let me repeat that we are not a political podcast. As individuals, we of course have political views. Sometimes we cannot hide them, but that's not really meant for this show. But when politicians contradict science or promote unscientific policies, we must point that out. Politics, regardless of whether you are right, left, center, or populistic, should be informed by science, because that's the only thing that works. It's the only thing that gets the result that you want to get, or at least have the chance to get to a good result. Populistic parties are generally the worst in this respect, because the very nature of populism is to tell voters what they want to hear, not what's true. So you tell them what they want to hear, even if it ignores reality. Reform UK is such a party, which is why we shouldn't be surprised, but sometimes it gets so bad that it just boggles the mind. Here is what Richard Tice of Reform UK actually said on camera, addressing the public during this year's, I believe, 5th major heatwave in the UK, which has caused thousands of deaths so far in the UK alone. This is what he said, quote, "Of course the climate changes, but where is the evidence that net zero is going to stop it? Where is the evidence? There is no evidence. Climate change has always happened, it always will. Maybe the smarter thing to do is to adapt to it than think arrogantly that you can stop it." And then he added, quote, "When it's a bit warm, let's enjoy it. And if it means that English wine and sparkling wine gets better and better, fantastic. That means we can take on the French. Fantastic. Let's celebrate some of these things rather than just be sort of doom and gloom about it." End quote. This is what the guy is saying about a phenomenon that is killing thousands of people in his country, and we should just enjoy the wine or whatever. I don't think I need to comment too much on this. He is, in my professional opinion, an asshole. So, for being a populistic, reality-denying twat, Richard Tice gets this week's award for being really wrong. So that's more or less it for this week's episode. Let's get a quote before we say goodbye. And you've already heard this quote on this week's episode, but let's hear it again. Make people think. This, of course, is from the interview we just listened to, but astonishingly, we have never used a quote from James Randi before, not in the history of this show. And we have also never used a quote from the show itself, which is a kind of meta, I think. So I think we should follow that advice. Let's go on and follow Randy's example and make people think. And if you know someone who enjoys thinking, or perhaps you know somebody who could benefit from practicing a little bit, please share the show with them, and you will have done a little bit to hopefully make things a little better. So share and subscribe and all that. Perhaps even go to patreon.com/TheESP and help us out a bit. But until next week, thanks for listening, and hej då!
This has been your ESP experience. The show is produced and recorded by TheESP.eu. Join us again next time, but until then, please send your feedback and comments to info@TheESP.eu. We would also love to hear your ideas and suggestions regarding topics, and if you have any skeptical news from any European country, we're always eager to hear about them. If you have an upcoming local event or an organization to promote, please don't hesitate to let us know, as we are more than happy to help. All music in the program was written and performed by Keisha J. Gray and George Robb and is used with their permission. Please check out our webpage for show notes and archive material at theesp.eu. Follow us on Blue Sky at theesp.bsky.social, like us on Facebook, or support our work on patreon.com/theesp. And don't forget to spread the word by sharing our content with others.
I don't know how you can believe.
You're not getting too tired or anything?
No,
Okay.
I had a little nap in the middle of it there.
Oh, great. Okay.
I'm glad it wasn't obvious.